Okay, so when I was uploading all these to YouTube and checking them real quick, this one had a flaw in it. So I'm having to go back in and redo it, and hopefully I've got pick up at the right spot for 9 and cut off for the right spot for 11. So anyway, this is lecture 12, part 10. All right. And according to my note to myself, I had last talked about probably be like, well, let me just go for it. Lend-Lease Act, yeah, we've already covered the Lend-Lease Act, and we've covered the situation with Germany attacking Russia. We need to get to patrolling the North Atlantic. Alright. So here's the deal. We have started supplying military goods to Great Britain under Lend-Lease. And so whereas before it was cash and carry and the British were supposed to come pick up the stuff, now we're actually sending some stuff their way. And America is going to institute a basically neutrality patrol. Let me give you some background here. Let me get my trusty pen. Okay. This is Iceland. All right. Oh, all these little red dots here surrounding Great Britain. Okay. Those are submarine sinkings. Just like in World War I, the Germans have instituted a submarine blockade of England, Great Britain. Ships entering the war zone are subject to attack. So the Germans are trying to starve Great Britain off from reliance of communication with Canada and Australia and members of the British Empire and Commonwealth. And the U.S., of course, is as a neutral power. We don't want warships sailing into our defensive zones. So the U.S. will establish a neutrality zone. Basically, kind of runs. You can see it on the map here. Kind of runs up here, over there. And we're saying there shouldn't be any warships coming into that area from countries at war. That's Great Britain or Germany or Italy or whatever. Okay. All right. Not that I think that was necessarily a big problem. Okay. So here's the deal. This is Iceland. I've already circled it up here. What if the Germans were to capture Iceland, which doesn't have much in way of defenses, and put a submarine base there? That submarine base could then, could supply submarines. It could be going further out into the Atlantic, and it would just be bad. It could put aircraft there to scout. And so the United States will put troops into Iceland, okay, to protect it. And if I recall, I think the Icelandic government, requested we do this. Iceland, I think, is actually run by one of the European countries. It's been seized by the Germans. Anyway, so now U.S. troops are in Iceland. Okay. All right. Now, if we have troops in Iceland, we have to supply them, right? Take mail, take supplies, and so now U.S. cargo ships are going between the U.S. and Iceland. And of course, United States Navy ships will escort them, okay, for protection from possible attack by German U-boats. Okay? Well, so we'll form ships into convoys and stuff, and of course we're sending goods to the British via Lend-Lease, and so we're putting protective convoys like a bunch of cargo ships with a naval escort. We'll tell ships from other countries, hey, if you want to tag along in our convoy for protection, you're welcome to come. And so now the United States Navy is running ships up into the North Atlantic, right? And we're running this neutrality patrol to make sure that the war doesn't spill over into this area. Now, here's the deal. I've told you, Roosevelt's looking for ways to help Great Britain stay in war against Germany. So if we escort ships out to some midpoint somewhere there's a cutoff line. I'm not sure exactly where, but let's say we'll just draw one here randomly. Okay. Let's say the U.S. Navy takes cargo ships to this cutoff spot where we then turn around and depart because we're entering a war zone. Guess who's waiting right on the other side? Well, when I'm doing this in class, usually somebody guesses German submarines, which isn't necessarily a bad guess. But tell you who's really there is the British Royal Navy. They're there to escort the cargo ships on into Great Britain. So what we're really doing here is this is a force multiplier for the Royal Navy. Instead of having to worry about patrolling the entire Atlantic Ocean, they can concentrate on the areas most vulnerable right around Great Britain. And the U.S. Navy is kind of like taking the ships over halfway and handing them over to the Royal Navy, the British Royal Navy. Okay. This is a way to aid, way to keep ships safe, but it also is an aid to the British Royal Navy because you've covered the amount of square miles of ocean that they have to be responsible for protecting. Okay? All right. Remember, I told you, Roosevelt's looking to aid the British in whatever way he can, even if he has to kind of like, bend the neutrality rules a little bit here or there. Now, with American ships operating in this hostile area, and do you think it might just be a matter of time before there's some kind of incident, because there's some kind of clash or misunderstanding between the Americans and the German submarines operating in the area? Well, yes, there are. There is. Now, the outline here, and it's partially hidden behind the map, but the outline mentions one thing. It mentions the Greer incident, which is all very good. But since this is kind of my thing, I'm going to talk to you about uno, dos, tres incidents, all of which help show an escalation of tensions in the Atlantic. Okay? So, the Greer is an American Navy destroyer. I should have a picture of her here if this thing works right. It's a blank photo. There's the Greer. Okay. The Greer is a World War I surplus destroyer. Okay, she was built for World War I. She's a bit old. There's newer ships operating the fleet, but the Greer is certainly capable of doing patrol duty in the North Atlantic. So some of these old World War I ships are still in service. Okay, maybe some of them have even been pulled out of mothballs to help beef up patrols. That would be, I don't know that, but it seems reasonable. Okay. Now, how can I tell she's a World War I destroyer? Well, it's my job to know these things. But an easy way to tell is these smokestacks here. This is what they used to call a four-stacker. Okay? The later destroyers we started making in the 1930s had a different silhouette. They were built different. They didn't have those four smokestacks. So the four-stacker destroyers are uniquely identifiable as being World War I era craft. Okay? Now, the Greer is on patrol in the North Atlantic, okay, and she's contacted by a British aircraft that warns the Greer that there's a German submarine been spotted operating in the area. It's almost as if the British Navy and the United States Navy might actually be cooperating a little bit, but gosh, we would never do that because we're a neutral power, right? So the Greer starts looking for a submarine. Some point makes contact. Can't have submarines underwater, so what you do this is with sonar. You may have seen this in movies. You send a sound wave out, and it hits something metal, it bounces back, so you get this ping, ping as you look. It sounds like gibberish to me, but someone who knows what they're doing can detect that there might be a submarine in the area. Okay? So the Greer finds a likely subcontact. They start shadowing the sub, to keep it maybe from causing any trouble. Now, to the Germans, they just know that there's a ship up there pinging them, and they're feeling stalked. Okay, so at some point, the German submarine fires a torpedo at the Greer. Now, and this is the Greer. I don't know if the German submarine captain deliberately missed the Greer just as a warning shot. Hey, we're willing to defend ourselves, or if he just missed. Okay, but it's not important. The Greer has been fired upon. The Greer responds by dropping depth charges. That's D-E-P-T-H, depth charges. You've seen these in movies. They're big round cylinders that look like trash cans. They're filled with explosives. They have a pressure fuse on them. You guesstimate at what level the submarine is, 100 feet below, 150, 200 feet. I mean, you have a chart. You know what the water pressure is as you go down based on things. So you guesstimate where the submarine is, you set the pressure fuse, you roll the depth charges off the back of the destroyer to where you think the submarine is, and try to bracket it. Okay? If one of these depth charges goes off close enough to the submarine, it can crack the pressure hull, thus letting water into the submarine, which is a bad thing because the submarine is already submerged underwater. It's already sunk. All you gotta do is let some more water in, and down she goes. Okay. So no one's hurt in this thing. The submarine escapes. The rear breaks off contact. Okay. Doesn't seem to be any problem. No harm, no foul. But an American destroyer has been fired upon. Roosevelt tells the American public that this was an unprovoked attack. The Gruer was shadowing the German submarine, but it's an unprovoked attack. He gives the American Navy permission to fire on German submarines on sight if necessary. He says you don't wait for a rattlesnake to strike before you try to cut its head off with a shovel. Okay, so the Navy has been given orders to consider German submarines as hostile. Okay, all right. So that was incident number 1. It was on September 14th, 1941. Okay, which is all we have there on the outline. But there's a second incident on October 17th. It involves the USS Kearney. Here you go, Kearney, Kearny, on October 17th. In a very similar situation, the Kearney is tracking a German submarine. A German submarine fires on the Kearney, and the Kearney is hit by the torpedo, blowing a large hole in her side and killing some of the crew. Now, if the Kearney is able to safely get back to port, she doesn't sink. She'll have to be repaired. But the Germans have torpedoed, struck an American warship, and killed some of our men in the process. Okay. Now, there's a third incident, most serious one of all. Happens at the end of October. Let me grab my trusty sheet here again. On October 31st, 1941, a German submarine torpedoes and sinks the USS Reuben James with heavy loss of life. Most of her crew goes down with the Reuben James. There are some survivors. So now a German warship has destroyed an American naval warship, causing heavy loss of life on the end of October 1941. Okay? Prompting the famous American folk singer Woody Guthrie to write a song about it. Tell me, what were their names? Tell me, what were their names? Did you have a friend on the good Reuben James? This is serious stuff, okay? An American ship has been destroyed. It really seems that it is only a matter of time before yet another incident will occur. Maybe this time an American destroyer will sink a German submarine, or a German submarine will sink another American destroyer. It really seems quite clear that World War II is fixing to explode somewhere out in the Atlantic, and that America will be drawn into World War II due to this undeclared naval war taking place in the North Atlantic. It really just seems inevitable, doesn't it? Surely that will be what draws us in to the Second World War. Or will it?